Hi everyone, welcome to this talk about field service simple. I do simple in quotation marks because can a field service solution ever be simple? Well, it's kind of hard to tell. But I will definitely try to showcase what I did for a customer, trying to simplify at least the field service solution. But just quickly about me and who I am. So my name is Thomas Sanser. I also go by the name of the CRM Keeper on social media. I have been doing Dynamics since 2007, so I still call it CRM because I don't really change the name. And field service is fairly new to me. I'm pretty sure that most of the people presenting here today have done a lot more cases than I have. But it caught my interest because I really did like the whole concept of booking and seeing things happening. It actually looked like a more complete product of many things that Microsoft had delivered lately. So bear that in mind when I tell my story. I do not have an extensive amount of experience in field service, but I do have an extensive amount of experience in Dynamics. So we're just going to build a scenario here. So if you lived in Norway instead of United States, you would pay 67% less for childcare. Fun fact. If you lived in Norway instead of the United States, you would pay 26% more for entertainments and sports. As you can see here, beer in Norway, it's expensive. If you lived in Norway instead of United States, you would pay 47% more for restaurants. Eating out in Norway, also expensive. And of course, if you add on to the beer, it's expensive. If you lived in Norway instead of the United States, you would be 36% less likely to be obese. I guess that one's pretty stereotypical. You would spend 43.3% less on healthcare. It's good to know if you move to Norway. And you would actually have the potential to live almost 2 years longer. And these, of course, are facts that I found on Google, so we have to trust them 100%. Not at all. But why am I comparing? Well, because the United States is 30 times larger than Norway in mass. So could I make a field service solution that was 30 times simpler? Because maybe the things that I'm seeing are simple needs. And why do I focus on simplicity? Well, one person told me that what I was working with was low-level workers, meaning that when the technical things that they were doing out in the field were so low value that this wasn't really field service full scale. And I get that, but that's the reality of what I see in the market when I go out. I have what we call a typical low-level worker, where what we are talking about is that they have a work order. They perform the work order at the given location. They update the status to complete. They might take a picture, but that's just about it. And you see, I would love to talk about many of the cool slides that other presenters might also do throughout the day here, or already have done in the previous events leading to this, and talking about how products are becoming services and IoTs and everything. But the truth of the matter is, for me, the cases I have been seeing, I have not been able to talk about moving all of our consultants over to the profit center yet. So talking about the servitization part of it, that's really futuristic for me. I'm actually meeting the customers where they're still focused on the cost center part of it. And it's kind of like the baby steps. You got to learn to walk before you run, or crawl before you walk. I don't remember the order of that one, but you get my point. I have to start simple and then scale them from that. So that's kind of what I did with the field service solution. I scaled it down to meet their simple needs. And from there on out, I hope that I can get to the part where we actually call them a profit center. So if we just think about what the bare minimums are for a field service solution, what's the bare minimum what you are going to need? Well, you're going to need a schedule board. Of course, you're going to have your resources. You're going to have a work order and a mobile application. At this time, I was doing the pictures from Resco because that was what we were using. And one thing I would point out is if you're going to do a field service implementation, do not start the implementation without at least considering what to do with an ERP integration. It doesn't have to be complex, and I'll show you how we could do it simple, but without the ERP integration, you are losing out on so many critical factors, I believe, in my setup. So sync to ERP and create order. I'll get back to these pictures later. So the business case here. So this is a live business case that I have, and as you can see here, these are people actually creating a meeting room experience. So this is a very early part of the project. They had a sales team, they have a project delivery team, and they have an installation team, which you are seeing a picture of here, and a customer service team. So I'll try to introduce you to the team. Meet the team. So here in sales, we have Susan. Project management, we have Karen. Field service agents, we have George, and customer service is Bob. All right, so we got to remember these characters throughout the whole presentation because I will be showing them based on what context we are in. But let's start out with the sales process. So sales process typically, initiating calls, initial calls, initial meetings. At some point, they're giving their opportunity some value and some more context into what we're actually selling. They produce some documents, and at some point, there is a handover. So project management will then have a project. They will read through the documents. They will create a project, which is kind of a financial dimension in an ERP system. Then they will do their project management magic, making sure that they have the right resources at the right time, and that the customer is ready for the implementation, etc. At this point, they're actually also going to be the responsible ones for managing the work orders, and therefore also booking the resources and then scheduling. So the project manager in this case has not just the day-to-day of project management and making sure that the financials are okay, but they're also the ones doing the resource booking. And so the field service agent, George here, he then gets on his scooter and drives out to where the work order is posted him, and he will be able to reuse these documents and do his work out there. And in the end, when he is done, he will then bill his hours, but he's going to write in his hours. More magic is going to be done, and we are going to be doing an ERP invoice. And for customer service, now you're going to kind of wonder, well, what's customer service doing within field service? Well, some of you know that the customer service absolutely is like a first line service before you convert it to a work order. I changed it around just a bit, and I'll show you briefly on what I did, but the whole essence of this is an incoming email would generate a case, would then generate a work order. As you can see, like that would be a field service task, and then the resource would be out there being scheduled. He would fill in his hours, and the customer service, Bob in this case, would come back and do the invoicing afterwards. So as you can see here, either if you are the project manager or if you were Bob, your responsibility is the actual work order and the invoicing. So the entity need, if you are a Dynamics consultant as me, you might just figure, okay, yeah, whatever you told me right now, that sounds like you're going to need an account, a contact, opportunity, project, case, and work order. So pretty standard within a field service solution. The case, of course, because, you need the customer service, work order, because field solution, and the projects. Yes, one could consider using the Microsoft projects. I am not going to get into that. I have not been able to understand the complexity of the whole structure there yet. So many cases, I see at least, we create a custom entity. And all of these are going to create documents, and as we can see on the personas here, for opportunity, that would be sales, project, services case, and work order, field service. But what if I say that, do I really need to differentiate opportunity and projects? And do I really need to differentiate case and work order? Because one thing that I do see in Dynamics a lot is the fact that there can be quite a lot of navigation. And the second you introduce that much navigation, the issues are typically they don't really understand where they are, because a work order looks the same as an opportunity, could look the same as a case, and suddenly you get lost. Unless you're, a smart user, you might get lost. So I'm taking away project and I'm taking away case. So I'm actually creating here an account contact, an opportunity where projects and that also becomes a project where sales and project work together, and a work order case where field service and service work together. So fewer navigational points and no custom entities. So here we go with the opportunity and work order case. So let's look at the opportunity, the beginning. Let's go Susan's work order process, okay? So she's in an opportunity right now, and what we're going to notice here that she has to punch in at some point the estimated hours technician, what we can see in red down here. So that's 250 hours. And that's an estimate that already now is going on to a BI report saying that, in the future we're expecting 250. We got to make sure that we have the workload capacity for that. As you can see here, pretty much everything else here is a standard opportunity. You enter your pipeline phase, your estimated revenue, close dates, etc. On the right side here, that's a PandaDoc integration. That's coincidental, but if you have electronic signatures within Dynamics, amazing. I just love it. Different session. All right. So she would then go through, Susan in this case, she would also have the typical business process flow working through the steps. So one of these steps that you also have to do is enter the delivery address, because she is the first person on site actually speccing out what is going to be delivered. So either we're going to base it on the address from the company, or this might be a different office for the company in question in CRM. So at this point, they can see, hey, if the project has a different address or the same address. And that's all of this is entered into the opportunity, as we can see. She also starts the job of entering teams, what I call a team and resources. So it's basically like a mini connections entity where I just store either internal people involved, or like in this case, it's actually the first one there, Vaktmäster, is a janitor. The janitor at the place, or the electrician that needs to be called. So we're building up a contact base for this work order, which we'll get to soon, that might be important. So numbers and email addresses for contact people within this project. And of course, during this sales cycle, she will be entering lots of documents. And the actual offer will be a part of the documents, standard integration documents. So as you can see here, you have the MB600 PDF and a sales agreement, and a regular picture PNG file of business apps on Microsoft Dataflex. So these are documents entered in the opportunity stage. Okay, so I'm going to get back to why this is important later. And so at one point, they get over to what we call the handover, the project handover. This is where Susan and Karen sit down in a meeting and they discuss the project. At this point, they actually discuss the opportunity. And this is where Karen takes over the process from where Susan left. So normally one would say, okay, but at this point we're creating a project entity. But I question and saying, why would I need to do that? Couldn't they just continue from where they left? So what I did instead was I continued to use the opportunity. So Karen is now working with her project prep, but working within the opportunity. And the benefits of that, of course, are things like she can continue to work on the existing documents without having to think of navigating from one entity to the other entity and which document location had the right document, etc. And thinking of copying, because at this point, I'm not doing any copying. This is just them working on actually the same entity, but this is now out of sight, out of mind for the salesperson, and this is very active for Karen. So from here, the first thing she will do is create a project. A project in this thing is not a CRM project. This is actually an ERP project. So this is just to create the dimension in an ERP system, saying that we are going to have a lot of expenses and hours towards an ERP. So that just gives us a project number, and the only thing it does is return back to CRM the number 184088. And this is an integration with a system called 24/7 Office. It's extremely simple. It's just a very, very lightweight ERP system. And she's going to also go through the list of teams and resources, and potentially she would add more. Because if she has different contacts that she gains throughout this cycle, she would enter these contacts. And from here, you can see that her job then would be updating the opportunity with the job description. We have the order information, and as you can see here, the project ID for 24/7. So I still don't really understand the work order type thing that we need to do before we convert from case and opportunity, but it just has to be like that. So this is always something she updates, and for new sales, it would always be an installation. And from here, when she's done with the process, we convert this to a work order. So in the background, I have a flow running that copies a lot of information from the opportunity to the work order. And I will show you in bits and pieces. I'm not going to go into details here. If you want to ask questions later, no problem. But no details. I'm just going to keep it high level. So this is the work order that then gets updated. And as you can remember, Karen, the project manager, is the one responsible for the work order. So things that I do copy in is the project ID, because we reuse that. And we have the instructions for what's going to be done. We have an estimate, which is actually just using the work order service tasks entity. I just renamed it to estimates. So from the opportunity, if you can remember, we entered 250 as the number of hours we estimated for this work order, this project. That has been converted to 250 hours in the work order, but that is equivalent to 10.42 days if you divide by 24. But again, this looks really stupid, but it is actually stored correctly in the background. This is just, again, standard field service. We also copy over the teams and resources from the opportunity, just so we can reuse the exact same contacts that have been entered both places. So these are the people, like the janitor, that you need to contact on the work order. Also, the address information is, of course, copied. This is standard. And this is where I do one little smart thing, and I actually take the document location from the opportunity, and I copy that to the document location for work order. I basically create a document location, so we don't have different documents. I mean, many people can talk about, security of this and security of that. Well, the thing is that, luckily for me, I would say, is that this customer is very open about sharing. They want to keep everything transparent throughout their organization, which makes a lot of sense in many cases. So therefore, these are actually the exact same documents being worked on the opportunity. So if something were to happen, a change in opportunity now for some strange reason, of course this would change here, because this is the same document location. This is not a copy of files, physical files. No duplications. These are the exact same. So what is the things that Karen could do now? Or of course she could do the typical drag and drop. But what we're going to do here, and what they do normally, is they use the scheduling engine just to say that I want to find a resource, and we're going to find Thomas in this case, and I'm going to book at least 2 days for him. So what we can see here, there's a duration of 250 hours, which is a lot. So then I can do the find availability, and so I can see here that Thomas is actually available throughout this time period that we're going to choose on the right side here. And I'm going to say duration. Because I'm just going to book 2 days. I don't want to book him for the actual whole project, because we have many other technical people being a part of this. So this is just the 2 days. So that would then look like this. So we get in and we have the bookable resource booking's been made in the calendar, as we can see here. So I've been booked. And we can now see on the work order in question here that it has a duration, a total of 250 hours. I have fulfilled 16, and the remaining are 234. Again, while doing changes, I'm trying to sort of keep that, I'm just changing the mentality of how things are perceived, but it is basically just a standard field service system here. And so what happens to George? Well, George has the Resco field service app installed. This being, the case started a long time before the new app was potentially available. So what I've been doing here is I've been changing it around a bit, and that's also a very touchy-feely kind of thing, because there's so many things configured in the out-of-the-box Resco that are really tough to change, because once you change them, there are so many dependencies. So much of this is built from the backup. But if you look at here, what I'm doing in the first case here for the bookings, I'm showing him his weekly calendar. So in the weekly calendar, these work orders are now red, or bookable resource bookings are red, because they haven't been completed yet. So we're going to open the Monday, and we're going to see here the same kind of setup that you would normally see. The only thing is I've changed a few names here. So you can see here for the hours, that would be the work order services, and you can see for product that would be work order product. Yeah, that's the work order products. Yeah. So anyway, products is products, but hours, work order services is just hours, because I'm using this to bill hours. And as you can see here, the cloud documents. Yeah, we can go through here. So the time what we're actually entering are the work order services. So we're basically saying that I'm going to be working on this between 8 to 4. That means I'm actually going to be billing 8 hours. And of course, George also has the documents that were started produced in the opportunity stage, which is cool, because that means he gets to reuse everything. So if I open this Dataflex, so this is just a copy from Yuka's company, the Forever Forward, and hopefully that's no copyright restrictions. But anyway, so this is Yuka's post he had about the Dataflex. So you can open on the Resco app, and then we see once George is done here, we can see that he's entered his hours. He had normal on this day. He had an 8-hour workday, but he also had 2 hours of 50% overtime. And he also has a note created because he took a picture, and he has parking included because he has a product here called parking. It costs 150 crowns. And once he is done for this, and down the bottom right, we can also see the same contacts. So the whole point of the contacts in the bottom right here is just to display that you get the exact same contacts all over the place. And everything is being reused as much as possible. So he can easily call the janitor if he needs the janitor. So we see here for the bookings, he will just note the booking as complete, and that will change his booking from red to green. So one more thing that, and then of course I'll go back to this, but so this will then update, of course, the schedule board in CRM, and we can see that this work order is now been from scheduled to completed. But George is not done yet, because throughout the week they have to produce at least 37.5 billable hours, or at least 35% hours, hopefully billable. And if not, they have to at least deliver the hours just to show what they've done. And this, instead of adding the hour line by line, I'm doing the hours in a calendar view instead. So this calendar component of Resco is actually quite nice, because what I see here is that I've billed my hours for Monday. That's fine, but I haven't, and I billed only half or almost half of my Tuesday. So I mean, I need to fill the early morning of Tuesday, and then also the same thing for Thursday. So what I see here is that there are missing hours, and these are hours that I need to enter. And this is just like any consultant would do. And this is maybe where I interpret field service completely different from other people, but the way the low-level workers are that I've seen so far, if we want to call them that, is more of they are actually out there performing tasks as if they were IT consultants, the same way many of us are, doing billable hours. So they would have to make sure that this thing was up to date. And of course, this is where George comes back and delivers it back to Karen. So Karen, in this case, when she takes over the work order, as you can see in the upper right corner, you can see here that it's billable hours 10. So that means that we now have a potential of, on this thing, which was the Monday that we completed, we have a potential of 10 billable hours on this from the estimate of 250. And we have a completed booking. So you can see on the right-hand side here. So I just separated the two boxes just to make sure that you have an open booking and the completed booking, so you can see them side by side. So for the products, Karen will look through and see, okay, we have parking here, fine. And we will also see the hours. And so this is where the synchronization comes in. So Karen's job is to go through and validate the hours. So she goes through and says, okay, we're going to send these hours to the ERP system. And keep in mind that this is a 250-hour project, and it will probably go over, so it could go over from 1 month to the next month. It will, and it might even go more, depending on the time of how many available resources they have to deliver the 250 hours. And so the question is, well, can't we just wait till the work order is complete and then do post as completed? Well, then you're losing out on billable potential hours for a long time. So what we needed to do was we had to have every single hour and product needs to be able to be billed at a monthly schedule, what they always do, the end of the month. So at this time, we're saying now, if it were the end of the month, they go in and they do update from not synced to ready to sync. So as you can see here, the status is not synced, and it will just move over to ready to sync. So when we do the move from not to ready, that means it is now prepared, so these hours can go over to the ERP system. So at a monthly rate, at the end of the month, they go through all of their work orders, all of the hours, to make sure that everything is okay. And the work order doesn't have to be completed, closed, posted. It is still open because there are still many, many hours left there to deliver. And then they create the order. All this does is just send a message down to the ERP system. It's just a basically one single message with a dump here, saying what you're going to produce is the technicians 8 hours plus his 2 hours overtime. And so as you can see here, this is the first time we see the price of the hours. And that's also, it's not coincidental. It's because every single customer might have a different hour agreement. And I didn't want to sync all of that to field service because I didn't really see the point of the technicians in field service having any information about that, because there are many reasons, and these things could change. And ERP systems are just better at keeping this information in price categories, etc. So all I do is I just copy these two product numbers, 27 and 10,091. I just copy them as products and say the quantity. And so the system does everything itself within price here per hour based on the customer. And that's as easy as you can go, and it works flawlessly. So then again, what about Bob? Where did Bob go? So if you remember Bob, he had the incoming email, the typical email to case scenario where you work. But the thing is that the way they work here is that most of their cases, if they have an issue, it might not always be solved by the first line worker. And I also saw the issues sometime with, at least after the demos, they got confused when I did the convert to work order, because it seems nice, but when they go over to the work order, they're confused to, well, where did I come from? And what is really happening within the case and the work order? So I decided to change it up a bit. So what we did was, on the email to case, we create a work order directly. So I skip case. So Bob, which is a customer service field representative, he is a customer service representative. He only works with work orders. So he then, when an email arrives, we create a work order. And we then added him into a new view. So within the view here, he can open up his work orders. And he will work with this the same way as a case. And there's no real big difference between a work order and a case. If you break it down to the simple things, it's just an entity, really. So what he is then able to do is either he can work on this as a first line support, and he solves the issue. But if the first line support doesn't solve the issue, then he creates a second line support incidents, as you can see here, and it's a work order type of service. That's what we set. And this is where George comes in. So George is back on the field, but he doesn't really, George doesn't care if he's doing an installation or a fix. The point is that he can do both things. So he's just, happy to have more work to be done. But in this case, Bob is responsible. The customer service manager is responsible for the booking of Bob, not George. So George is then booked the same way. He does his hours the same way. He fixes everything and reports back to Bob. And that's where then have a handover. So Bob then would do the exact same process of the creating an order after this is done if there is billable hours. If not, this could be a part of a service agreement included in the price. But the whole point is that we only have very few entities here. We're working with opportunity, we're working with work order, and we have 4 different roles really well melted together. So this would be, in theory, how you could make a simpler field service solution with not necessarily it all being all that simple. So this was a really quick talk. I hope this made sense at all. Yeah, so thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.